Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the course of English for Academic Communication with me, Maria Dewi Rosari from Jakarta International University in Indonesia. Welcome to Lecture 6. We are halfway of the course. And today we have a new topic as well. As usual, we always have a different thing to discuss in every lecture. And in this Lecture 6, our topic is pyramid discussions and informal debate. Well, actually, this lecture is the continuation of the one we had in the previous lecture, which is Lecture 5, which is about small group setting part 2, right? And we have discussed the mechanics of the language and also the strategies for success. And now for Lecture 6, what we have is the application activities. So for this lecture, you will see how to apply all the mechanics of the language, the expressions, and the strategies in the real, communication setting. And the activities that I provide to you in this lecture can be used for two purposes. First, for your classroom instruction, if you are using this lecture as an instructor or lecturer. But if you are using this material for your self-study, don't worry. You also can use this material. Okay, so I provide you with different procedures to conduct the application activity for classroom instruction and also for your self-study. All right, before we start the lecture, let's find out the learning objectives of this Lecture 6. As usual, for the very first section, I provide you with introduction and review. So I will very briefly introduce you with what is this Lecture 6 going to be about, and also a bit review about what we had in Lecture 5. And then in section 2, we are dealing with facing challenges and exploring hidden assumptions. So I will provide you with a list of questions for you to answer. And those questions are aimed to help you recognize and be more aware of your challenges in a small group setting, and also explore any potential hidden assumptions. And finally, the section 3 will be the application activities, and there will be 3 activities. The first one is pyramid discussions. Second one is informal debate, take 1. And the third one is informal debate, take 2. Although the name is the same, informal debate, but the type of the debate will be different, and how to conduct it is also different. And it doesn't mean that what we are going to learn in pyramid discussion has nothing to do with the one we had in informal debate, though. So if you can do the pyramid discussion first, it will be easier for you to conduct the activities in informal debate. Well, so that's the big picture of what we are going to have in Lecture 6. All right, without further ado, let's start this lecture with the very first section, which is about introduction and review. Lecture 5 and 6 center on participation in more advanced small group settings, with Lecture 5 focusing on building mechanics and strategy competence involved in expressing opinion and managing turn-taking. I hope that you still remember, right? And Lecture 5, we are dealing with a lot of things related to expressing opinion, agreement, disagreement, partial agreement, and also managing turn-taking. While Lecture 6 focusing on the application activities of Lecture 5 materials. Now, let me start with this question. There are a lot of types of expressions that we discussed in Lecture 5, right? Can you name some situation in which you can apply the mechanics of language learned in Lecture 5? So in what kind of situation, in what kind of conditions can we use them? For example, academic discussion or even classroom discussion can accommodate those, the application of those expressions. What do you think? And then before we see the application activities, let's see the review section. Let's review the mechanics of the language that we had in lecture 5. Right, now it is the introduction and review section. And we will see the list of expressions that we need to review. So like the one that we had in lecture 4, I will provide you with a list of expressions taken from the previous lecture, and you need to match them with their purposes or their groups. Let's take a look. So there are 8 expressions now, right? And I want you to match them with their functions on the right. Are they expressing opinion? Are they for agreeing something, disagreeing, or other functions? If you think you need more time to complete this exercise, please pause this video as long as you need to make sure that you have completed all the questions here. And do not go to the next section, the next slide, because the next slide will reveal the answer for you. But whenever you're ready and you're finished, continue to slide 5 to see and to check your answers. Okay, so here is the answer key. What do you think? Will you get all the answers correctly? Let's see. The first expression is, I think that's for expressing opinion. I think that, and then you continue with your opinion. Number 2, I'm not sure that I entirely agree with you because it's very obvious that it is for disagreeing, right? And then number 3, that's an excellent point. Of course, that's for agreeing, right? Because it's saying the point that's just made is excellent. Number 4 is, that's what I think too. Another agreeing expression. Number 5, another interesting point is, what do you think? It's contributing additional point or adding new point of the discussion. The next one is, it seems to me that the real issue is emphasizing a point. Number 7, let me summarize what we have talked about. Of course, that's wrapping up discussion or summarizing a discussion at the end. And that's the role of a leader of a discussion or meeting or seminar too. And the last one, what's your position on? That's asking for opinion. When we want to elicit opinions from the member of the discussion, we can use this expression. All right, I hope that that's not difficult exercise and review for you, okay? And we will use those expressions for later the application activities. All right, now let's go to the next section, which is about facing challenges and exploring hidden assumptions. Just like the same section we had in the previous lectures, it will help you analyze and recognize the challenges that you usually encounter when taking a part in a small group setting, and also exploring any hidden assumptions, right? Let's go. So as usual, this section will offer you diagnostic questions to diagnose your challenges and assumptions, right? And here is the instruction. Explore these questions on your own if you use this material for self-study. In a classroom, share your thoughts about these questions with a speaking partner and be prepared to share your discussion with the class. But if you are using this material for a self-study and you don't have someone to talk to, that's actually still okay not to share it with anyone. Just use this diagnostic questions for a medium to self-reflect, to reflect on your experience, your preferences, what you have experienced or had so far. All right, let's find out the first question. How do you distinguish among fact, opinion, belief, prejudice, and stereotype? Together, come up with a statement about each of them. Why is understanding these terms important in the context of academic dialogues or discussion? So first, what you need to do is to find out the definition of each of the terms there. And then number 2, why is it important to, to be able to distinguish one from another? For example, it is after you define the terminology, you can say that it is important for us, for example, to know the difference between fact and belief, or fact and opinion, because we cannot claim our self-judgment as a fact because it's an opinion. So we don't mix them up, for example. So what do you think? And then question number 2, there are 4 questions that are related. Number 1, what does academic freedom mean to you? So it's asking something in your opinion. So you don't really need to, like Google it up or ask someone else, like in number 1. If you don't think, for example, you don't know the meaning of stereotype, you may Google it up, or you can check it out in a dictionary or ask your friend. But for number 2, it's all about your opinion. What does academic freedom mean to you? So, and you can answer it from any angle that you think is, doable for you. Number 2, do you give your own opinions in classroom discussions? If not, why not? And if yes, why? Number 3, how do you feel about your ability to express agreement and disagreement in academic discussions versus in interpersonal communication? So it's comparing. It's asking you to compare your ability when expressing agreement, disagreement in a, one-to-one communications versus the one in a forum. And then the last one, what are some personal difficulties that you face in offering your agreement or disagreement when you participate in seminar discussions? Well, the difficulties or the challenges can be from many aspects. For example, my challenge is that I'm not that comfortable to show disagreement because I am afraid I will sound offensive to other members of the discussion, for example. Or when you're taking a part in international seminar discussions whose members are from various countries, the difficulty may cover the cultural aspects. For example, you can say, I'm not that comfortable showing my disagreement to the members of international seminar discussions because I don't really understand their cultures, and I am afraid that what I do is making them uncomfortable, for example. Then number 3, what are some dimensions of cultural differences that may influence or create an obstacle in how, for example, professor or student and student with different cultural backgrounds interact and communicate in expressing opinions? So we're talking now about cultural differences. Maybe you and your professor are from different countries. Your professor is a native speaker that has this type of culture and preference, while you are from, for example, Southeast Asia countries like me, that has different set of culture. Maybe your professor is from high context culture while you are from the low one. So what are the cultural differences that triggers difficulties in taking a part of the discussion? And then number 4, share with your speaking partners how you express agreement, disagreement, and partial agreement. Together, write down as many ways as you can remember of stating your opinion, agreement, disagreement, and partial agreement about an issue for discussion. So speakers have various and different way to express this agreement, disagreement, or even partial agreement. How about you? How do you usually express each of them? If you don't have someone to talk to or speaking partner, that's okay. You can still make a list of expressions that you usually use. Next question. What is turn taking and what does it matter? Well, if you have completed lecture 5, you will have had the idea of what turn taking is and why it matters, right? Why in a discussion do we need a turn taking? Why don't just let one person take all the time to talk? Okay. And then number 6. Now we are dealing with your personal cultural perception or interpretation of interruption in interpersonal conversation or academic discussions. Consider cross-cultural differences. What factors may come into play in turn taking? Some people are not that comfortable to take initiative to, to talk in front of the forum, right? We still remember that cultural factors that influence that. While in other cultural groups, such initiative is very encouraged, right? If you want to review the cultural differences, cross-cultural differences, you may go back to lecture 1. There will be a lot of cultural factors discussed there that can help you to answer question number 6. And then number 7, how do you know when it is your turn to talk in a conversation? What kinds of verbal and non-verbal signals have you noticed being used in turn taking in academic discussions that seem different from the customs in your country? It's now about turn taking still, right? And how do you know? For example, you are in a group discussion, right? You are in a group discussion and someone is speaking and you feel that you want to give response or you want to, express your ideas in response to what the person just said. So how do you know when it is your turn to talk? How do you know if the person is finished with their talk? Can you identify any verbal cues or non-verbal cues from that person? That's for number 7. And the last one for number 8. What are 2 biggest challenges that you and your group members shared in dealing with taking a turn at speaking in academic discussions or interpersonal communication? Brainstorm some strategies that will help you to overcome them and prepare to share them with the class. If you're using this as a self-study material, so you may, check Google to find out what can other people have to be their biggest challenges in dealing with turn taking in an academic discussion. All right, so that's 8 questions that are useful for you to identify any challenges and any hidden assumptions in small group setting, what's that, communication, right? And please use them as a, as a guide for self-reflection, because those questions require you to reflect on your experience a lot. And when you are able to answer all those questions, you will have, identified and acknowledged your problems, your issues, and any potential problems in taking part in such setting. If you're finished with this question, you may go to the next section. Otherwise, just stay on this section until you are finished, until you have identified all your challenges and hidden assumptions. If you're done with the section, let's go to the next section, which is section number 3, the main agenda for lecture 6. It's about application activities. We will start it from pyramid discussions. Pyramid discussion. Well, I believe that the concept of pyramid, or what pyramid is not something that is new to you, right? Pyramid like that. And we are using the concept of pyramid in a discussion for a communication activity. Okay, let's find out what should we do in a pyramid discussion and how can we apply the mechanics of the language and the strategies we discussed in lecture 5. All right, for this one, unfortunately, it is only for classroom instruction because it requires the students to work with different partners to create the pyramid. Okay, but if you're using this for a self-study, you can still follow the procedures of this application activity. Just in case you can find some speaking partners that can help you to execute this activity. Let's see how it's done. A pyramid discussion is a method whereby participants are encouraged to engage in discussion while gradually increasing the group size. That's why it's impossible to be done in a self-study. Starting with working individually, then working in peers, then in groups of 3 or 4 before gathering the groups for a whole class discussions. So this is the concept of the pyramid. So what's that? Individual work, and then peers, and then group of 3, and then finally the whole class. That's creating the pyramid. Here is an example of the steps that you may want to take. So if you want to use this activity in your classroom instruction, it's not an obligatory to follow every single step provided here. If you want to adjust it to the real condition of your class, it's very okay, it's fine. And if you think some steps or 1 step or 2 steps are not doable in your class, then you can skip that, or you can put a bit modification and adjustment here and there. So step 1, individually generate choices about the 3 biggest challenges for non-English speaking international graduate students studying in a North American academic institution. So the topic here is non-English speaking international graduate students studying in a North American academic institution. If this context is, something that makes your students unfamiliar, you may modify that. For example, the students from your country studying in a Western country or in another country that has different type of culture, that's still doable too. So ask your students to list down 3 things to do in step 1. And then in step 2, ask your students to work in peers. Ask them to share and discuss their personal choices and decide the top 3 choices and their ranking. So one student come up with 3, another student come up with 3, and they work together and they have to discuss and select the top 3 choices and rank them. Okay, so previously they have 6 choices, but now they will end up with only 3 with the ranking. And make sure that they know the reason to why they chose those 3 compared to the other 3. Next one, step 3. After the peer discussion, form a group of 4 to share your updated top 3 choices, and then together decide on how the choices should be ranked. So after working in a peer, ask the students to work in a group of 4, and they need to share their 3 choices. And again, they have to select the new 3 choices and rank them. Okay, so previously 2 people have 3, 2 people have another 3 answers. They meet together in a group of 4 and they have to decide the new 3 choices with their ranks. It will trigger them to have discussion, and you need to encourage them to use the expressions, for example, agreement, disagreement, asking for opinions, expressing opinions, or many other expressions that we had in lecture 5. And then in step 4, bring the groups together to elicit each group's top 3 choices. Each group should take turn calling out the numbers of each choices. Write the top 3 choices from each group on the board for all to see. So in step 4, you meet all the groups, right, as a class, and ask them to share the 3 choices that each of them have. In step 5, in groups of 4 from step 3, prepare arguments to defend your group's choices in order to persuade other groups to make changes in their choice. So in step 5, students need to be persuasive. If you are the students, so you need to be persuasive. You present your group's choices that may be different from what other groups have. But you're not only presenting them, but also, persuading other groups to agree with your choices instead of theirs. like that. So provide your arguments. Please use the expressions from lecture 5. And the last step for this, gather the groups for a whole class discussion. Remind the participants to apply the mechanics and strategies for expressing opinions. So now finally, gather all the groups for a whole class and let them share their finding and let them express their opinions, their reasons, their judgments like that, and encourage them. And please encourage you yourself, if you're using this for your study with your friends, to use the mechanics and strategies for expressing opinions. Okay, so that's about how to conduct pyramid discussions. You can always modify the procedures and also the topic. If the topic is too difficult for your students, you may choose a topic that is simpler and easier, or that is more relatable to your institution condition too. All right, that's the end for pyramid discussion section. The next one, we are moving to the next section, which is about informal debate, take 1. All right, now let's move on to section 3.2, the second application activities, which is about informal debate. This is take 1, or version 1, or part 1, whatever you name it. For this take 1, I will provide you with procedures for those who are using it as a classroom instruction, and also another different procedure for those who are using this material for self-study. Now let's start for the procedure for the classroom instruction. Although it's not your main purpose, I mean, you are using it as a self-study, but I think you will still benefit a lot from following the procedure of the informal debate take 1 for classroom instruction. In discussions, it's important to be able to express your opinion clearly, and most importantly, to support your argument with reasons, examples, or evidence. So when we are giving an argument, it's not just an argument, but we need to provide reasoning. We need to provide proof, evidence, and also examples, so that our argument is not too personal, but it's based on, or it's backed up by, logical reasons, logical thinking. The following article, titled Debate as a Pathway to Academic Discussions, which was published in TESOL Journal, provides a detailed procedural description of an informal debate activity. So what we are talking about right now is informal debate, not the one with, a certain procedure and certain rules. The model outlined here presents one of the speaking activities designed to facilitate learners' development of advanced speaking skills that are needed in academic discussions. This facilitation is accomplished through an informal debating format aimed at familiarizing learners with the language used in expressing opinion, and also at fostering learners' critical thinking and speaking. The average working time may range from 60 to 120 minutes, depending on factors such as the topic, the class size, and the time allocated for whole class discussions. So again, the debate here is the informal version, the informal layout. So it's not like the one we usually see in a debate competition. So here is the procedure, or how to conduct the informal debate for classroom instruction. Step number 1. Facilitate a 10 to 15-minute brainstorming session to elicit expressions useful for stating opinions, agreement, disagreement, and partial agreement. You may write down expressions contributed by learners on the board or on overhead, which later can be used as a reference tool for learners in their application of those expressions. So you can provide your students with this kind of table or a handout like that, and ask them to list down expressions to, to show their opinion, to show that they agree on something, they disagree with something, and they partially agree with something. This is also, possible to be used as a review of the materials you learned in the previous meeting, which is about the mechanics of language, right? So for whatever the students propose or any expression mentioned by them, write it down. And I will suggest that to make the expressions that they mention clear to everyone in the room, so that later when they really need to use, really need to, for example, express their agreement, they can easily see that list of expression and they can pick one for their, for their speech or for their talk. Dedicate 10 to 15 minutes, but it's actually, not optional though, but you can modify the time a bit. If your class is a fast learner, then you can reduce it to 10 minutes or even 7 minutes. But if you think that your class needs more time to complete this section, so you may dedicate more time. So it really depends on the situation you are having with your classroom. Number 2, explain to the learners that this activity will be devoted to a critical discussion of the pros and cons of a specific current issue. It is important to clarify that the format of this debate does not follow the formal rules of a debate or the ones we have, for example, in a professional debate competition, in which comments are judged and one side is declared the winner against the other. So the goal of this application activity is not like finding the winner or the one with the stronger argument. No, the main goal is that to facilitate the students to, to apply the mechanics of languages and also to apply the strategies discussed in the previous meeting or previous lecture. Point out that the purpose of this informal debate is for the learners to practice expressing opinions, right? It's not to find the winner against the other, and engaging in the exchange of ideas. The goal is to develop a broader view through the exploration and consideration of different perspectives on an issue. So this is the instruction that you need to provide to your students. Concentrate on reasons and not positions. That is, to explain their own reasons for a position and question the other person in order to discover the reasons behind the differences and address them respectfully. Also remind them to be respectful. Still about being respectful. Respect others' viewpoints by listening attentively to each point or counter argument. So although their opinions are different, help your students to still show respect, and by not interrupting the objections or explanations of the other person. Well, they may be allowed to interrupt though, but they still need to do it, wisely and respectfully by using the expressions that we had in lecture 5 first. And then C, use the diverse insights and perspectives of others to advance their own understanding. So this is one of the main goals of this application activity. Is not, to declare this group is the winner over the other, no, but it's to, practice the mechanics of language and also to help the students advance their own understanding, to help them, construct ideas, and to help them, to be more well-spoken, because when they have arguments, they have opinions, they have their thoughts, they need to, they need practice to be able to convey their message, their opinions in a well-structured way. Step number 3, ask the learners to work in pairs. Give the learners 10 to 15 minutes to perform a pros-cons analysis of the issue by filling in the chart provided. Remind learners the importance of concentrating on reasons and not positions, and of finding out the reasons behind the differences when there is a difference of opinion. So you can use this. You can make another printout or handout like that and distribute it to your students, right? And ask them to list down any pros and cons so they work on both sides. the pros of this issue, the cons of this issue, but that doesn't stop there. They need to be able to provide supporting points, supporting reasoning, or any evidence that support their argument, right? You can modify this table, but I think it will be way better if you provide the printout of that table so that your students have guideline on how to do the analysis. Step 4. Randomly divide the class into 2 groups, pros and cons. So now the students are divided into 2 different positions, pros and cons. Or have a quick poll regarding participants' position on the chosen issue. So you may, let the students choose their position, or you assign a certain position to certain students. You choose. If there is a roughly 50-50 split, ask learners to form a team with those who share the same opinion. That's also possible too. Then you may assign the pro group members to present the pro side or its opposite. Encouraging learners to represent the opposite of their opinion provides opportunities for learners to think critically. It helps to develop their abilities to think outside the box by considering a different perspective and by examining an issue from both sides. So, because they now are divided into 2 groups, pros and cons, so now you can provide your students with another handout. And I choose this topic, the same topic that we use in the previous application activity, and you may choose another topic that is more applicable to your students, of course. So with whatever topic you use, but if you think you cannot find one and you want to use the same topic, that's okay too. So ask them to fill in this this table again, okay, but now with their own position. So if they are pro groups, so just fill in the the column for pros, and the same thing with the other group. And the topic is about uniform. Wearing uniform at schools can enhance students' academic performance. And using the same topic, you can help your students to fill in this table too in step 3. So you can dedicate like 10-15 minutes for them to complete this, but it still depends on the situations of your class. And then step 5 will be like this. Randomly divide the class into 2 groups, pros and cons, and have a quick poll regarding participants' position on the chosen issue. If there's a roughly 50-50 split, ask learners to form a team with those who share the same opinion. Now assign the pro groups to present the pro side or its opposite. And again, encourage them to think critically, to think outside the box, to use different perspective, and to be able to see the issues from both sides. So it's not only about seeing seeing this issue, this topic from their angle, only their angle, but also from the opposite angle. Then step 6. Give the learners 10 minutes to solidify reasons for their positions, as well as to consider the responses to possible arguments that the opposite side may present. Encourage the learners to jot down keywords or points that may help them present their ideas and arguments. You may provide copies of the following sheet to help the learners formulate their thought or responses. Well, so here is the sheet first. I will show it to you. The 10 minutes can seem to be a very quick time, right? A very short time for them to complete that. So you may add more, add more time for your students to complete the sheet. But what is important here is you need to provide them with this kind of sheet so that they have guidelines. They know what to do. They know what to discuss with their groups. They know how to solidify their reasons, right? They know how to jot down key points or keywords, and they will, have more guidelines on how to present their arguments later or how to present their ideas later. Because the high possibility is that they have so many things in their heads, right? They have so many points to deliver in their head, but they find it difficult to, to make the flow of the thought, like to make the coherence in their speech. So by using this kind of table, we can provide guidelines and help for them to be able to construct, a well-structured talk or response when in their what's that in the next step in which they need to present their arguments later. And then step number 7, begin a 20 to 30 minutes debate by asking a willing member of the pro side to present one of the arguments. Allow any member of the con side to reply, to disagree, to interrupt, even if you think it is allowed and it is okay to have interruption during someone's speech. But if you think that's that's making the situation a bit more complicated, then you can eliminate the interruption part. Then let the discussions flow according to the ideas being presented. Allow learners to discuss their ideas freely and exchange their arguments as each point emerges. Expect this informal debate to be lively and allow both sides to play their roles as advocates or opponents of the particular issue at hand. Make sure that there is a broad and balanced discussion by participants. So as an instructor, we need to, really monitor how this informal debate goes. First, to make sure that they follow the procedures well. Number 2, it is important to make sure that everyone can contribute equally, regardless of their position on this topic or issue. And if you spot any student that is shy, that is not really willing to speak, or the opposite, you see someone who really likes to dominate the debate, so we need to take an action, right? We need to mediate the situation. So here, if that case happens, you may interrupt students who tend to dominate the discussion tactfully by saying something like, say the name. For example, John, you touch on some very important points on this issue, and I know that you have a lot of points to add. But before we hear them, let's get some input from other members. Does someone else want to comment on the issue or what has been said so far? Right, so it's shifting the speaking turn from this, dominant student to other students, so that we can make sure that every member has the same opportunity or equal opportunity in this communication. And if you see any shy student that you think that they actually, have written down a lot of ideas and thoughts, but they are just not that confident to speak, you can say the name in an encouraging way, of course. I noticed that you wrote down some points earlier. What do you have? So we acknowledge that effort first. We see that they have done something in their writing. It's just that the confidence that they are lacking. So we can help them by asking this, or intentionally giving the time to that kind of student. So again, it's to make sure that everyone has the chance to speak, everyone has the same opportunity to participate, and to try, to try the theories, to try the expressions, the mechanics of language, and of course, to try out the strategies. Next step, provide learners 5 minutes to consolidate arguments and prepare brief speeches summarizing their cases. Each side will nominate a person or ask one volunteer to summarize the team's key points of view, following the simple format of position, one sentence, and then the next sentences will be supporting points, and finally with conclusion. Okay, and before you ask the students to execute this step, you may provide guidelines by, okay, so you can, do the consolidation by first, you open it with one sentence stating your position, and then after that, you continue with several sentences, say 5 sentences about the supporting points of your position, and finally conclude that in one sentence. Because sometimes, not sometimes, there is a high possibility that the students don't know how to consolidate the arguments. They don't know how to, construct the consolidation. So we need to provide the guidelines. And then number 9, wrap up the activity with a request to the learners to self-reflect individually for 3 to 5 minutes on their participation by answering and sharing the following questions. So what is equally important here is that they do self-reflection. So self-reflection is not just answering questions, but it's to, look back to their self, to their performance, to their experience that they just had. So what have been good, what needs improving in the future, and what needs to work more on, right? And there are several questions that can guide your students to do self-reflection. The first one, what do I like about my participation today? So let them see, let them answer this question from various angles of writing. So let them, answer these questions freely. And then number 2, did I experience any difficulty in expressing myself today? If so, what was it? So now it's, asking the students to identify their difficulties. And then the last one, what is one thing that I can do to help me more successfully convey my thoughts next time? So in this last question, we are asking the students to reflect on what they can do to help themselves. Although they are students, but they are already capable to analyze what kind of strategies that they need to take for the next step. And let your students to answer question number 3 from many perspectives, from many angles. So just let them reflect and answer these questions freely. The conclusions for this application activity is, this activity involves the use of cooperative activities such as peers, small group, whole class discussions, and individual presentations. So the interaction pattern is various, right? It's from individual, peer, small group, and whole class, like bigger forums like that. As learners share their ideas, they will have the opportunity to experiment with the language used in expressing both agreement and disagreement, and will also be required to support their opinions. So it's not only about expressing agreement, disagreement, or opinion, but it's also about how they can support their opinions, how they can provide supporting points for their opinion, or for their agreement, or for their disagreement. As a help for learners' ability to formulate and deliver their thoughts in a clear, organized manner, provision of a sheet as presented above has proved to be an effective mediating tool, and the sheet becomes the text that the learners use when they speak. So the sheet is not just, it's just a sheet, but it's a help. Even it's a very beneficial help for your learners to be able to, to follow the activities, to follow the procedure well and easier. Encouraging the learner's habit of jotting down thoughts has the added benefit of helping learners follow the flow of discussion and keeping learners focused and less apprehensive during the delivery process. So we are not only providing guidelines, but we also need to encourage our students. Instead of engaging learners in what could very possibly turn into an antagonistic debate, which may lead to adversarial discourse or feelings, this activity encourages creativity, exploration, and critical evaluation of both sides of an issue. So we need to be sure with the main goal of this activity. The focus is on the promotion of communication communicative interaction, and on encouraging learners to take a stance of respect and open-mindedness in exploring ideas, uncovering differences, and comparing and contrasting various interpretations. So it's not for competition. It's not for declaring someone is the winner and the other is not. And the mini reflection at the end of the activity encourages learners to become more critical, to take greater responsibility for their own learning, and to plan a specific goal-oriented action to attain improved oral communication skill. So we are not highlighting the competition, we are highlighting about the encouragement and more practice for the students for the development of their communication skill. Well, so that's about how to conduct informal debate for classroom instruction. For the next one, let's find out about how to conduct this one for your self-study. All right, now let's move on to the procedure of using informal debate take one for your self-study. Well, actually, the procedures for the self-study is more or less the same with the one we had for the classroom instruction, but the procedure is way more simplified. Let's see. Although you are using this material for your self-study, it does not mean you cannot practice the mechanics of language in a debate setting. You can still train yourself into constructing opinions or ideas using the mechanics of language in lecture 5. So don't worry. If you don't have someone to practice with, you can still practice the materials from lecture 5 and you can still do the informal debate for the practice. However, you need to work on both positions, pros and cons. So you will do double job here. You will provide the opinions for the pros position and also the cons position. Take a look at the following procedures. So there will be a step-by-step guideline. You can easily follow them. Number one, in step one, list down expressions for agreement, disagreement, and partial agreement. So it's the same with the first step of this application activity and classroom instruction. You can use this table or you can create your own, but what's important is that you have a list of expressions to show your agreement, your disagreement, or partial agreement. Use this or take this also as a review of what's that? Lecture 5 materials, the mechanics of language. Step 2, if you're done with step 1, continue with this. Take 10 to 15 minutes to perform a pros-cons analysis of the issue by filling in the chart provided. I will show you the chart later. Remember to focus on reasons and not positions, and on finding out the reasons behind the differences when there is a difference of opinion. Take a look at this one. So now please do the analysis of pros and cons. So you need to work on both positions and write down the issue right here and the pros opinions here and the cons opinions in here. Don't forget to provide any supporting details, supporting evidence, proof, reasoning, data that can support your argument. Step 3, present your thoughts. To whom you should present to? It's to yourself. So you can do self-presentation. Talk to the mirror or record yourself when you are presenting your thoughts. So after that, you are able to, evaluate yourself, to analyze yourself and observe yourself. Present your ideas in a form of a short speech or a short talk. You need to do it twice, of course. So first you do it as a pros, and then in the second one you do it for the cons position. So you do it twice. So you present the ideas as someone who agree and someone who disagree with the thought. Next one, jot down keywords or points that may help you present your ideas and arguments. So to help you in constructing the short speech or short talk, to present your thoughts, jot down the keywords and the key point first, because by using that, it will be way easier for you to construct a short speech. Then Formulate your talk or response using the following sheet. Take a look at this one. So in here is the introduction of the main points, right? Write it down here. And then the reasons, any reasons or any examples are provided in here, written in here for the supporting points. And then this one, please write down the order to be presented, which comes first, which comes later, which comes last. And finally, summarize your talk, summarize your speech, make a summary covering all the points you have covered previously. So that's how you construct your short speech. So you don't need to worry where to start and how to start it. Just follow this one from the introduction, and then you go to the supporting points or the body of the talk, and finally you close your talk by providing the conclusion. The next one, step 4, self-reflections, the same step that is also present in the one for classroom instruction. What you need to do is to wrap up the activity with a self-reflection in about 3 to 5 minutes. What you need to do is answering the following questions. Number 1, what do I like about my practice today? So although you are practicing by yourself, please write down your feeling. What do you feel? What do you like about it? And number 2, did I experience any difficulty in expressing myself today? If so, what was it? So is there any certain difficulty when you were completing step-by-step guideline that I provided to you? The difficulties can be in many forms. It can be about how to present it, meaning that it's your presentation skill, or it can be selecting the right expression or mechanic of language in my talk, for example, or how to maintain my eye contact, how to use my body gestures. That can also be the difficulty. So the difficulty can be seen from many angles. And then the last question for self-reflection is, what is one thing that I can do to help me more successfully convey my thoughts next time? So after analyzing your feeling and then your difficulties, please reflect on what you can probably do to help yourself in a future practice or future application of the mechanics of language and strategies. All right. You may, have spotted some things that, I should have done this, I should have done that, right? So that can be the strategies for you to successfully convey your thoughts next time. Right? So the steps for informal debate take 1 for self-study is way shorter because it's just involving you yourself compared to the ones used for the classroom instruction. Yeah, because it involves a lot of people, so the steps can be various and the procedures is longer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end about application activities number 2, which is informal debate take 1. The next one, we are going to see the informal debate, but take 2. It's still about debate, but it is done in a quite different way. Let's find out. Now that you are more familiar with the mechanics and strategies introduced in lecture 3 up to 5, use this activity as an opportunity to build your confidence about engaging in academic discussion. Right, so far we have covered a lot of mechanics of language, right? Starting from lecture 3 or even lecture 2 up until lecture 5, the previous lecture. We have also covered the strategies for success to succeed our participation in various academic communication skills settings, right? So use this activity as an opportunity to build the confidence to use all those theories. The instruction is like this. Randomly divide your class into 2 groups and have someone volunteer to be the observer for each group. So yes, unfortunately, this is what's that? For classroom instruction first, although it's still applicable to be used in a self-study. So divide your class into 2 groups, pro group, contra group, like that, and select volunteers to be the observer for each group. Take a look at the following topics. Work in groups to show that you are aware of both sides of a position by brainstorming the reasons or the supporting statements or supporting details for those positions. Share your personal opinion with regard to both sides of the issue in question with the group and provide the reasons. Be sure to practice using the phrases from previous lectures for giving, eliciting, and expressing opinions. So still, please use the mechanics of the language. Encourage your students to go back to the list of the expressions discussed previously. So it will, help them to retrieve the knowledge that they have stored, right? Now I will show you two topics that you can use for this informal debate. Let's see topic A. The topic is about the advancement of technology, okay? And I will show you the examples of opinion that is expressed using one of the expression in the mechanics of language we discussed previously. The left side will show you the pro position, while the right one will show you the contra position. Advances in technology have benefited society. Examples of opinion is like this. In my opinion, that's the phrase, right? In my opinion, technology connects society from rural areas to the big cities. It enables society living from various areas to work together, especially for their business. This indeed will boost the power of the economy of the society. So that shows agreement to the topic. Now let's see the contraposition. Advances in technology have caused problems for society. It's the opposite, right? And the examples of opinion is expressed using the phrases of I strongly believe. I strongly believe that advancement in technology brings more harm than good because majority of the society is not ready with the fast technology development. One of the examples is that the misuse of technology for child abuse. Instead of being a country's next great generation, child is being traded for the sake of money. The next generation will be degraded if the society is not equipped with adequate guidance on how to wisely utilize this technology development. So that's the example on showing pros and cons to show the two positions. Now it's your turn to practice. Before you give this for your students, it's better for you to practice first. So for the pro position, it's advances in technology have benefited society. And for the contra position, it's advances in technology have caused problem for society. If you're using this for your self-study, that's still is very doable too. So now it's your time to choose any phrases, any expressions from the list of mechanics of language in lecture 5 to express your opinion. It is better for you to come up with more than one key point so that you will use more than one phrase of showing agreement and showing disagreement, right? So pause this video. If you need more time to complete this, you may need to consult the Google, find references, find books or news or data to support your arguments. But whenever you're ready, let's go to the next slide. And I have topic B for you. The topic B, the same thing. I'll show you the examples of my opinions, and I will highlight the expression or the phrase I use to show or to express my opinion. The topic for pro. There are advantages for international graduate students in the role of teaching or research assistant. And my opinions is like this. My point of view is that involving international graduate students in the role of teaching or research assistant can bring us lots of advantages. One of them is they are the people They are the people who are the most updated with the current issues in research because they need to have lots of reading during their study. Their academic assignments require them to have a routine journal reading so that involving them as a teaching research assistant will bring us and our own students more enlightenment on what researchers are currently talking about. And then for the opposite position, there are disadvantages for international graduate students in the role of teaching or research assistant. Let's see the example of opinion. I'm not sure that I entirely agree with the idea of involving international graduate students in the role of teaching or research assistants because they are still students. They haven't graduated nor proven their quality as experts in teaching or research. They may have also still been developing their understanding on teaching pedagogy and research methodology. This may create misunderstanding to our own students and classroom activities. So as you can see here, I use different phrases, right? My point of view is that, and I'm not sure that I entirely agree with, right? So this is just an example. And you can use different phrases and you can come up with more than one opinion so that you can practice more phrases or more expressions from the mechanics of language. Now it's your turn. The same topic, advantages and disadvantages of involving international graduate students. So what do you think? What can be your opinion to support this idea or to not support this idea? Pause this video to give yourself enough time to answer and to write down your opinion. And after that, try to present it and evaluate yourself on how to present, on how you present your opinion or arguments. Now, we're going back to the last step for the classroom instruction for this informal debate, take 2. And this is for observer. Remember that we chose 2 people to be observer of each group, right? The pro group and cons group. And this is what the observer needs to do. So please provide them with a paper for them to take notes. And this is what the observers needs to take notes on. First, they need to be observant of the nature of your group's contributions by reflecting on such questions as, is there a balanced interaction among the participants? Yes, why? No, what's the proof? Do some tend to speak up too early or too late? Do some speak too much or too little? This is to make sure that everyone has equal opportunity to speak, right? Do some tend to make very lengthy comments or comments that are too brief? What sorts of questions are posed? What type of questions? Are they relevant or they're just questions? Or, some students, as long as I pose questions, that's it. They don't consider like whether or not the questions are relevant or contributive to the discussion or to the activity. So observer need to take notes on that. Are certain types of comment often made? So although a lot of comments are given during the debate, but they are just repetitive, that's also not good too. Do participants challenge each other with their comments in a constructive way or in an emotional way instead? So we really need observers to spot those things. It is impossible. Well, maybe it's still doable, but it's still doable to be done by the members or the participants of the debate themselves. But when it's done by an observer, they are neutral. They are not from the pros group or the cons group. And what they did was just observing. So they focus on the observation activity. So they can observe way more detailed activities and interaction happening in the informal debate. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so that's all. That's it's a wrap. That's all the application activities for the application of small group setting part 2, the application activity of the materials we had in lecture 5. I hope that they can provide you with chances to apply or to implement what you learned in lecture 5, and to give you ideas on how to apply or how to provide such conditions in your classroom so that your students can practice the mechanics of language and also strategies for success about small group setting part 2. If you want to see more readings and then references, you can go to this book from Wang 2010. I took the material from there, page 38 up to 39 and 43 up to 46. Well, it's been a pleasure to accompany your learning so far up to lecture 6, and we still have another 6 lectures, and we will have way more various settings for the practice of academic communication. That's all for today. That's all for this lecture. I'm Maria Dewi Rosari. Thank you for joining my lecture, and I'll see you in the next lecture.